Hello and welcome to IXR Real Talk. My name is Colin Cooper and I'm joined here with Megan Freeman, my co-host.
So excited to be here, Colin, and really excited to meet weekly with our team to have unscripted conversations on all things education.
Yeah, let's talk about how this podcast came together.
Absolutely. Well, we were just getting together with our awesome team. We have over 200 years of experience in the education realm and began paying attention to what's happening, boots on the ground in the education culture, and started to have meetings where we were just talking about what's going on. And one of our team members said, "Why aren't we recording this?"
And there was silence. It was like, can we actually share these conversations with the real world? It was like, absolutely. Yes, let's do it. And so we have. And these podcasts are typically unedited, end to end. And so you will get real talk from us talking about real topics. And so we pull back the curtain and you will get to see it behind the scenes.
The heart, the love, the ethics, the morals of this awesome team who's coming together to bring real solutions for future-ready schools.
Absolutely. We really hope you enjoyed this very first podcast and the very first question that we do. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Any questions, topics that you would love us to cover, please hit us up in the comments below or via our email.
And like and subscribe. Enjoy.
Enjoy. Theme that continues to get asked almost daily in my inbox is what are schools actually doing on the ground to prepare kids that are still coming out into the workforce, because it's getting more and more frustrating when you're hiring, because the kids that are leaving school and university have got less of an idea today than what they did 20 years ago, 5 years ago. And so it's not getting better, it's getting worse. So what's actually happening on the ground to prepare them, because it feels that schools actually are just making the problem worse, not better. That's a common question.
That's an interesting point. My wife is doing her currently this is her question, is the proper way to attenuate Generation Z workers, or at least a sizable majority of workers to the real workplace. What she's noticed when she was in charge of younger workers is that they don't have the resilience to be able to work. To them, 4-day work weeks should be normal, and they will willingly take their birthday off like it's some kind of holiday. And for us, we look at this, we're like, are you what? But as she's looking at this, and her interpretation is interesting, and we have to also consider her background is a little bit more gruff, I would say, than most folks, but she tends to look at SEL potentially being the soft spot in the equation, that there's too much coddling and not enough, get up and rub some dirt on it.
And I would challenge that. The best schools I've seen, so as someone who's been in the education realm for a long time, like many of us on this call, the best classrooms are often the noisiest. They're often the messiest. Why? Because students are sitting in collaborative groups. They're designing. Project-based learning is the key. Teachers are not looking at the goal being the end product. They're looking at the goal being the learning process. And my biggest fear right now is standardized testing has become the norm, and that public schools specifically, need accountability. I am 100% for accountability. But when the end product becomes the standardized test, we all remember cramming for our finals, right? You're sitting up with your flashcards for 2 days and you cram for your finals. And let's just say we all passed our test and did great. What happens 2 days later? You purge all of that information. So when the goal is the assessment, you learn really quick that deep thinking is not the priority. And that is my biggest foundational concern with public education. As we've had the No Child Left Behind Act, while the intentions were very good, we don't want to leave children behind. Well, we have, because when we have decided that standardized testing is more important than deep thinking, we are disallowing or looking at the process as being end product. And now, guess what? We have AI here. So we have college students completing their entire course with AI. I have a big question. If a student can complete an entire course and pass a course with AI, what was the goal of that course? Was it work completion or thinking? And I think
that's a very good question, because when we look at education, do we ever ask the question, well, is what I'm going to invest my child into a quantity education? Do they have good numbers? Do they score well? That's the quantity education element. Or is it a
such
quality
a long time
education?
though, right?
We always ask the quality question.
Yeah, but that's been the norm of, like, if you look at our parents and our grandparents, if you look at, you go to school, you get good grades, go to college, uni, or try and get a good job, you stay in that job for 20 or 30 years, you retire, get a pension, and so on and so on. The reality is that world has long gone, and that really started to change in the early 2000s. So, we are 2 decades, 26 odd years later, that hasn't existed at all. And really the education system that we've got currently in place, not just in the US, but worldwide, is educating children for a world that hasn't existed for 50 or 60 years. And, and I know there's a bunch of different opinions and arguments around this, but that's the reality. And this gap, certainly from what I've seen, the gap in the last 20 odd years of me hiring has just got bigger. And then through COVID and now with AI, it's just exploded, right?
But then if you
nothing
take that
changed.
From what Tori said about students wanting the days off, the 4-day work weeks and all of this, because even when that system existed, we see that why would you want to work for 20 or 30 years for the same company just to be handed a watch on your way out? They're disenfranchised with the entire system. So
that's fair.
There's that part.
That's fair.
And then why don't I want my birthday off? Who doesn't want their birthday off, right? This why are we working for a company that will replace us immediately if something happens, but doesn't look at us as a human? So there's that part of it. And then the other part of it that really was standing out to me was if we teach towards test, then the moment that I get the right answer for the test, that's where my thinking stops. There's nothing about it. There's no opportunity to go deeper. So even if I'm at the front of the class and I've gotten the concepts like this, as soon as I get the answer, I'm ready to move on. There's nothing to assimilate. How does this idea tie into something else?
I want to pause you just for a second, Lucy, because we are amongst a crowd of peers. We do have someone with us who has not lived our life. And she just made a comment. Cam.
Get on the camera.
Come on, Cam.
She brings a very valid point, and I wanted to point this out because she's in a different generation than we. And she's living the life that we are talking about.
Most of my generation's lived experience is that we were told by your generation, do this in this steps in this order. And that's not how our world works. So we followed those steps and none of them worked. So now we're sort of like, nobody knows what the correct formula is. Like having a consistent job for more than a decade, next to it, that's like winning the lottery. It's not that people don't want to work. It's that we don't want to work for something that's not going to give us the returns in the end. Why slave away extra jobs for this amount of time if you're not actually going to get the thing you were promised out of it? Like
and I would
for
agree.
Our parents, it was do this and you get a house. For us, it's do this and you get a 50-year mortgage, maybe. So,
and I would also say that, without looking at that massive end goal, generations have gone through the internet. So much more going on in their head than we might have done because we were climbing trees and rolling down hills and, playing outside till dark. But if we don't take into account what the students are living and ask them to co-create their education with us, how dare we just walk in and say, this is what you have to learn and this is how you have to learn it. And that's the outcome that you have to work towards for years and years and years of your life. Because we, who are not your generation, believe that that's what you should do. And we're the last ones to know because we're not we're not living what they're living. So we need to create moments where students can co-design and bring to the table who they are, what they know, how their brains function. And as it is, there are very few opportunities for that. So of course they're disenchanted with the system. They're not part of it generally.
And I think that's happened for years, right? This hasn't been a magic pill that's happened quickly, right? Slowly and slowly, students have become disenfranchised with the system. And I've spoken a lot about the CEOs of our largest companies around the world. The most successful people have dropped out of school or were in alternative education settings because they were put into this box in the education system, that box cam that you were talking about. Do this, then this. But the most innovative, creative, intelligent, smart people didn't see the connection between school and real life before they even graduated. So they decided, what's the point? Those are the kids that are going to use AI to check the box no matter what you do.
I'm one of those kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I struggled at school. I left school at 15 and, but, you know, built my first website at 15 and started charging for work and repairing computers and started a business at 18. But my maths teacher, I remember plain as day, told me I'd never amount to anything. And the school guidance counselors told me that I should go and collect bins for a living. Wow. And, you know, fast forward to now, I've proved them wrong. And maybe some might turn around and say it was because of that. But I've seen this thousands of times now where we've had the voice in people's heads is so damaging through school with where a teacher or someone that's in a mentoring style position, like a teacher, a guidance counselor and that, when you're speaking to some of these top CEOs and you're coaching them and mentoring them, they still have this voice, this tape playing in their head of what they were told through school. I think so much through school. And we know, you know, when kids are through, 5, 6, and 7, that really defines their emotional well-being and how they can tackle, creative and critical thinking. And then that's further then developed into high school. In my opinion, the whole system needs to be completely revamped, because it doesn't work. It works for those that are going to go on a path to get a white collar job or going work for someone for 20 years. But like what Cam was saying, it's broken. Why would you want to go and work for 10, 15, 20 years just to be kicked out?
Because and these are the kids who want to work. It's not like they don't want to. There's a huge group of kids who want to work. Colin's got a great point here. There's a huge group that want to work, but they're like, the world that you set in front of me is incongruent with how I've been trained, and my expectations are now completely misaligned with the reality.
And all of the years that it takes to get there, if you're the SEL thing, if you are feeling like you're in a prison sentence for all these years, how do we switch everything so that they feel this is my opportunity to invest in myself? This is the place for me to grow and understand who I am and, find out all about me. I know that I grew up in the UK, and you start to choose your subjects at the age of 13. I thought that was amazing. I felt so empowered because I had to start choosing and saying, well, I'm fairly good at this. I'm really good at that, terrible at this, but I've got grit, so I might do that. At 13, that's the time where your brain is starting to really rebel against everything. That's a great age to start making choices. But that doesn't happen everywhere. And even then, when you make your choices, it still feels decided by somebody else, right? You can choose certain pathways, but the outcome is still these standardized tests that you've got to be able to shine in, because and your parents would tell you, otherwise you're never going to get anywhere, you're never going to become anything, or never going to do anything. I agree with you, Colin. If we revamp the whole thing to, hey, come along here and you get to invest all these years, you don't have to work, right? You just get to learn about who you are and a bunch of skills and knowledge along the way. But it's the philosophy, the psychology behind it. And I think teachers who aren't psychologists are going to find that really hard to understand. So I would change the teacher training as well.
I was just going to say that, Anna, I was speaking with a superintendent yesterday who was discussing their hiring process and looking at human intelligence skills as being something they were looking at, right? So if we're expecting students to be critical thinkers, communication, and collaborators, We need to no longer hire teachers for subject matter competency. We need to hire them for having emotional intelligence and human intelligence. And the teacher-student relationship is extremely powerful. And I don't care how much technology is out there, that role of the teacher, the ability to be able to influence, to encourage, to guide. And guiding is a very important word when you're looking at a teacher's role. And and there are some shining lights out there. So I know we have a lot to revamp in the education system, but you can't also deny that there are some amazing people who have courage to do things differently. And there's a lot of talk about personalized learning, and that needs to be quantified and qualified, because personalized learning is very messy and noisy and challenging to do well. But when you have a system or a culture that focuses on the human first and the standardized results second, I've seen firsthand that you can see improvement in all the hard skills that are necessary for students to be successful. So the beauty of this team is that we come from, and I love that we come from, different lenses, different lanes, different experience, all kind of touching education in one way or another, and looking at focusing on humans first, this thread of making sure that the people in the room matter, whether it's student agency, whether it's teacher training. What does it mean to be fundamentally human in this age of technology, and how does that impact technology is this question that this team is wrestling with as we begin to develop tools that are absolutely tools. They must be designed with human intelligence in mind. And when our slogan, human intelligence by design, this team walks the walk. We really want to make sure that whatever we do focuses on supporting and augmenting and increasing the ability for a human, whether it's the adult in the room or the student.
Yeah.
To improve.
I would say that, all right, just maybe add to that.
Does it matter though?
The mindset of pacing guides and standards first. I think if we were going to target anything, that would be it.
Mm-hmm.
That has to take, it's not like you can get rid of it, but you put it in the back seat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in a totality, perhaps the right phrase is addressing the whole human first. That breeds the question, how do you do that mechanically? I mean, what's the process? I mean, it's easy to say, maybe we have some sort of tacit understanding, but maybe I take an opportunity here to redirect the conversation a little bit and ask that question. What does that look like? If you're going to say, all right, let me show you.
Absolutely. Well, you need to first define, the goals and objectives. What are those skills that businesses are seeing? And I heard your question, Colin, why does it matter? And he would know well because he lives in the business world. We have students graduating college and high school, really great at school and really, really terrible at work.
Actually, some of my worst team members over the years have been the ones that have come out with the highest qualifications, because they've been trained a certain way, and we've had to spend years in investing in them to remold them, and they've now gone on to be entrepreneurs and run different companies and so forth. The reason why I'm asking why does it matter as well to that is the speed of change that we're seeing. Traditionally, if you look at education, it's a big ship, and I get it. I understand it. Worldwide, we've got public education, private education, and everything else in between. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. There's a lot of people there making decisions, and it's a big ship to kind of steer in a different direction. But the time that we're in, and the time that we've been in for some time now, instead of it being a big ship, it's like when you're dealing in business, you really need to grab a kayak and you need to be nimble. It's like what Cam was saying. If you look at most of your businesses now, whether big or small, most of their business plans are no longer 10 or 20-year business plans. Most of the business plans are 24 months, broken down into 12 months. And then it's like, can we survive the next 6 months? Which makes it really then difficult for when then you're looking for work. If the business itself doesn't know what the trajectory is in the next 12 to 24 months, and then it's like, okay, are they going to be around? And it used to be, okay, if you go with the bigger companies, you've got stability, but in fact, you've got less stability now in the bigger companies, and you've got more stability in some of the startups because you're likely to keep your job, or at least be able to come in and be nimble.
And Colin, I always say that, that coming into work in a startup at first it can be really hard when you have been a top student and a type A leader, and you have to go to the messy space. But if we had more time in schools in that divergent thinking and less in the convergent thinking, there's one way to really, really work on human skills. Humans' brains are messy. We have to think creative thoughts, and we have to try new things, and we have to fail, and we have to understand how to continue. And as you say, we're going from great big long-term corporate jobs to startup because we're readjusting our world, and this is going to happen in businesses. If education focuses on convergent thinking, which is all get to the test, they're not going to be ready. So we just spend more time in divergent thinking. That's where we put on the back burner potentially the points on the curriculum. They're still there. That's what we're still thinking about, but we're thinking about it through divergent thinking. It's a very important human skill.
I agree. And I think it's this idea, and I've always said it's the Mary Poppins syndrome, where these people who are running education believe they have to have the answer. So Tori, the answer is, I don't know. And
come on, Meg. I thought you had the answer.
We need really smart people.
Oh, never mind. Cancel everything. We're done.
And how scary is it to have a leader that says, you know what, this is a really challenging problem. I've never been through an AI implementation before. I don't have years of experience to go back and look at the implications that this artificial intelligence is going to have on humanity. And I can't really read the future to be able to determine the exact path I should tell my daughter going into college, maybe not go into college, going into college. Like, I don't even know how to answer her questions because I don't have the ability to see. A lot of people are having conversations and are becoming experts in AI. And I would challenge that unless this has been around a long time where we can go back and study the implications, all of us are learning. All of us are in productive struggle. All of us have to get together with really smart people in the room. And guess what? Try. And guess what? Be okay daring greatly. I believe that this move in this moment is going to make the biggest impact for kids. And guess what? I'm going to develop it and I'm going to try it. Do you want to know why I left public education to be here? Because I believe daring greatly, getting surrounded by extremely intelligent people who believe in human intelligence and creating something that we are going to try and dare greatly and help. This problem is bigger than a localized school district. And this problem needs collective people to get together and say, I don't know, and here's my best try. Here's my best solution. Go out and try it and see what works, and then study. Stop taking things that aren't working and continuing to do it. That is the definition of insanity. And when you look at the public ed system, we're continuing to focus on standardized testing, yet spend $30 billion on public tech. It's out of control. You want to know why? Tech's a tool. When it's not designed to improve human intelligence, it will never help proficiency. When it's designed to diminish your thinking and diminish what you are and who you are as a human, it's output. So my challenge is we don't have to have the answers. We need to come together. We need to see what's not working, and we need to create solutions and dare greatly to solve and work and let students help us. Cam was the best example. Where is student agency? The adults in the room need to listen to the kids. And it's interesting. If you go back to the beginning of school and schoolhouses and why America was so different than some of the other schooling systems, it's because we allowed for innovation and creativity as a part of our learning process for so many years. We have the most creative thinkers in the United States. And to me, that idea of diminishing innovation and creativity and entrepreneurship because failure is scary. It's even scary for the adults. Look at the question. What do we do? How do we solve it? That natural instinct to be the solver, the one who has the solution. Well, guess what? The people who have the solution are often brave enough to go out there and try things, look and see if it works, revamp, revise, try again, work to see if it works, revamp, revise, try again.
You need to fail fast.
You need to fail.
That's Colin's thing. Fail forward fast.
Yep.
So we brought Cam up into the equation, and Cam is sort of, how does it feel to be the sole representative for an entire generation of students?
Yeah.
Let me ask you, what did public school get wrong? You know, you now having stepped out into the real world, and her college experience wasn't what we would probably call standard. I think it was probably the optimal college experience because it was sort of this academic skill training hybridization that I don't know. I think it was freaking awesome. But if we're looking back at K-12, Cam, you know, look at your experience back then. What did we get wrong? No pressure.
Yeah, I'm like, that's a bold question to ask. I know for me, it's like one of the biggest things is like why stuff is important. Because if something doesn't feel meaningful, it gets sort of automatically sorted into what my my anatomy teacher in high school called learn and burn memory. Where it's like, all right, we're learning this for the test, and then after the test, I don't need this anymore. It's not important, and it's gone. So it's if it doesn't feel like it has a practical use or some sort of importance, or it doesn't apply to something I'm interested in, then why remember it? Why spend the effort? Because especially like now with the amount of information that you're given and learning and seeing daily, whether you're in school or not, it's rapid, and there's so much that your brain is absorbing every single day that choosing what things to hold on to can get quite overwhelming. So I think that's the biggest thing. Like I was never a history person, because it was very much just like memorize date, person, location,
which is so
copy,
sad,
repeat,
which
is
a
sad.
living narrative.
Exactly. It's like
You know,
that subject is
how
incredibly
it was
interesting,
taught
but
could
we
have been so
neuter it.
easily changed.
Well, and one thing you brought up, Cam, that was super important is like the standardized test is something that everybody has to learn. Testing is a part of life, right? It's a skill. Yeah. So if we treat it as a skill and not the end result, the end result is the learning process. And I think one of the things you said that was like, yeah, I see this problem coming in 6 to 12 months with all of these AI tools out here that are able to have output for education, students. There's going to be so much curriculum and so much output. How do we know students are learning? And when you have that overload, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I go into these stores that are discount and they have like clothes everywhere and I'm just looking for a black shirt, that when I have to sort through all of the shirts to find the right black shirt, I get really, really overwhelmed. So in education, when we have access to things that can personalize and more data is coming at you and it's the input is just extreme now. It's fast and it's extreme. How do you filter through that to make sure students are learning? And that's what IXR is here to do. There's many, many things that we are doing in this company to make sure that we are filtering through the noise. But the goal needs to also be these well-rounded individuals. So sometimes kids are going to say, I don't want to learn this. And sometimes that moment of sitting in that, I think this is boring, might spark the next scientist who never thought they would be. So what I don't want to do is also have a culture that doesn't allow for kids to dip into things that they don't think they want to know. Because I've had a lot of teenagers in my career. I have 3 teenagers I went through myself, and they're very opinionated. They don't know what they don't know. And so we also need an opportunity for kids to be able to sit in experiences that maybe they don't think are for them, to understand for sure. And if they can sit there and explain why not, that this experience is not for them after learning it, then maybe that's right. But without them sitting there telling me why not, when they go, I just don't like it, that's not an answer to me that allows for them to be disengaged in a concept until they've learned that concept well. So there's this balance we have, right? Giving students agency, but also making sure they're exposed to the arts, to music, to the sciences, because we all have these unique brains and we are on bell curves in what we do naturally well. And finding out what our natural gifts are, I truly feel is the role of school. Where's your natural strength? How can I build you up on the things that maybe you're not as strong in, but really push you in the direction that you were born in? Like children that are artists that draw, but don't go into art. Like this gift, I see kids, it's my daughter. She's amazing. She's an artist, but she refuses to go into the world of art. It's so interesting to me, but her skill is 1%. Many people can't do what she can do. She does easily. So I think maybe because it wasn't cultured, it wasn't something that you could go into this as an adult. And so it's interesting that it's not an easy problem. If it was, a lot of us would have really been tackling it. So I'm so excited for this first unfiltered conversation.
Meg, just before we wrap up, just on that point, we kill curiosity. There was a number of studies done. I actually spoke about this in my talk, in the TEDx talk. Kids June, like most kids between 3, 4, and 5 have somewhere about 300 to 400 questions per day. And it differs slightly between male and female. But when they get to school, those same kids were tracked. And when they were 6 and 7, those questions went into single digits. In 2 years, went down into single digits. And so is it any wonder that when kids are then coming into high school, we've kind of educated out of them about being curious and being creative and having critical thinking or anything like that? Because it's literally educated out of them.
Yeah, it's gone. And that question that they ask when they're little is why? Why?
Right.
I think we should never stop asking why. If a teacher doesn't make it clear why is stuff on the table for you, how on earth are they supposed to? They shouldn't be there. How on earth is the student supposed to see? To go back to what you said, Cam, you know, it's never about what, it's always about why. You know, why would I turn to look at this? Why might this be something for me or not? We've got to keep the why on the table always.
And I'll just jump in to say, when it comes to that why, for me as a teacher, my first thing is, but I have these things I need to do. If I've got 30 kids asking why, how am I possibly going to move forward? And then that begs the question, why am I always the one that has to answer? Why are we not providing spaces? And I know that there are a million educators doing beautiful things out there where they're letting and allowing for students to collaborate together and to have these conversations.
It's those teachers that's the reason the whole thing hasn't collapsed yet.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
There are amazing teachers, amazing district leaders, amazing administrators who are taking risks and allowing for these things to happen. But it's not the norm still. It's still splattered a few here and there. The problems that Cam was talking about are not new to Cam's generation. I think most of us were bored. Colin's out there leaving school at 15 to go start businesses.
I'm out late.
Right? And all of us, like, flexibility is such an important part of this, because all of us in the jobs that we've worked and the way that we have created our own experiences as adults has been because we have been doing what Colin did at 15, which is being flexible and looking for something that's not mapped out. So Cam, your generation, you're going to have to map it out for yourselves. And we have to teach kids to do that, because lots of times they say, where do I start?
And so do the adults. So there's a lot of unlearning we have to do for the adults in the room. So I wonder if our next question on our Unfiltered should have some type of topic where why are schools seeing failure, but they cannot see learning? I look forward to that conversation. Thank you for being here on our Unfiltered with IXR. So proud of this team and so honored to work with everybody.
Thank you, everyone. See you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.